Hey everyone, welcome to the Who Dat Chat. I'm Conor Robinson, of course. Joining me today, founder of the Who Dat domain, Michael Balko. Mike, what's up, man? How you doing?
How we doing? We're both fresh off vacation, so we're feeling fresh and we're ready to bring this heat in today's episode.
Absolutely, we're ready to go. We are doing our 53-man roster reaction. Saints announced it just the other day. A lot of interesting moves here, especially. So let's go ahead and just kick things right off. We got the quarterback situation playing out kind of how we expected it with, Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, and Ian Book making the roster. What are your thoughts on those three quarterbacks?
I thought that was pretty obvious, pretty set in stone. Obviously Jameis as the starting quarterback now. He looked really sharp in the preseason, especially in that second game versus Jacksonville. Those two deep touchdown passes to Marquez Callaway, obviously that really set him apart in that competition. Then Taysom Hill, obviously going to be the backup quarterback, well, probably third string quarterback actually. Their Saints are still going to make a couple moves. I would imagine Simeon will probably be back on the active roster to serve as the backup, just because I don't think Ian Book's ready to be the number two yet. But Taysom's definitely going to be playing like that everything role again. Sean Payton already kind of came out and said that, so it's obviously he's going to be on the roster still. And then that third quarterback is Ian Book. Like I said, it'll probably be Trevor Siemian as well until Ian Book is ready to kind of be at that number two quarterback. But he's in his first year, and he didn't see any substantial playing time in the preseason. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a guy that's going to have to take advantage of the opportunities when they come in is Ian Book. Jameis, starter as we all thought. Definitely excited to see how he can build off of those plays, especially that deep throw to Marquez Callaway, which was a good one. But yeah, Ian Book, I do think he'll have to take advantage of the opportunities as they come, because with the quarterbacks they have now, that those are going to be few and far between for sure. Moving on to running back here, it looks like we have Kamara, Tony Jones, Dwayne Washington, and Latavius Murray. I thought Devonta Freeman would have been involved a little bit more, but it looks like still a pretty decent group.
Yeah, this is kind of how I envision the group. Latavius Murray obviously really struggled this offseason and in the preseason. So he was definitely a threat to be cut. And I think if Devonta Freeman maybe would have gotten more carries in the preseason, he could have taken, Latavius Murray's spot. But it's nice to still have Murray. He still has a couple years left on his deal. So it's nice that we have a little insurance there. But Kamara obviously didn't even have to play in the preseason, so we have him nice and fresh for week one. Latavius Murray, we already just kind of touched on him. Tony Jones Jr. was the star of the preseason for the Saints, so that's a pretty obvious selection there if you ask me. He's probably going to serve as the number two running back behind Kamara. So that's that competition between Murray and Tony Jones Jr. is a competition that's not going to go away anytime soon. It's going to carry over into the regular season as well. And then Dwayne Washington, just like we mentioned on like the 53-man roster prediction, I kind of had him making the roster just because he does play special teams for the Saints and he does a very good job of it, especially since the Saints lost a few very valuable special teamers this offseason. Keeping a guy like Dwayne Washington who's blocked a couple punts for the team and plays on kick return and all that stuff and can run the ball himself a little bit as well. Keeping a guy like him around was obviously a very smart decision.
Yeah, and I think what hurt Freeman the most is he didn't really do much with the touches he had. I think it was, 8 carries, 11 yards or something like that in one of the games. And that, when you're fighting for a place on the roster is definitely going to hurt you. I am excited to see that QB battle between Latavius Murray and Tony Jones, as you mentioned. Alvin Kamara, obviously the number one back, but it's good. Always been a good two back dynamic there, it seems, under Coach Payton.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that battle's not going away anytime soon. Yeah, and right now I think Tony Jones is probably going to serve as that initial number two, and then I'm sure Latavius Murray will work his way in there as well. And you can never predict injuries or anything like that, but I'm sure they're going to come for the Saints because they already have started. So yeah, I mean, it's just nice. We have, believe it or not, quite a bit of depth in that running back room, so that's pretty nice.
Absolutely, and we'll just move on to wide receivers here. It looks like a decent amount. Michael Thomas obviously injured. but we have Marquez Callaway, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Ty Montgomery, Traequan Smith, and Deontay Harris. What are your thoughts on that? I don't see Tommy Lee Lewis here on my sheet as well. A guy I thought would maybe make it.
Thankfully, you don't see Tommy Lee Lewis on that sheet. But obviously, Marquez Callaway balled out in the preseason. So he's probably going to be our number one to start off the season. Traequan Smith, he didn't play at all in the preseason due to an injury, but he's been with the Saints for a few years now. So he's definitely that number two. Deontay Harris, we're still waiting to see if he's going to get a suspension. I doubt it's going to come the week of a game, especially with such short notice. So that's something that'll probably happen later on in the season. So it's nice that we have him for week one. Same with Lattimore. We'll touch on that a little later. Lil Jordan Humphrey, he played well in the preseason as well. So, I kind of saw him making that roster spot. And then Ty Montgomery, and the versatility that he has, he's pretty much a lock for the final 53 as well.
Yeah, and then I'm looking through our original notes here. No Chris Hogan either. It looks like he wasn't able to make the final 53. Callaway, I do think will be an exciting player. I got him on my fantasy team, and I'm really hoping big things, and he can take advantage of Michael Thomas's absence.
Most definitely.
Let's move on to tight ends here. Looks like 4 have made the team. Garrett Griffin, Juwan Johnson, Adam Troutman, and Nick Vannett. What are your thoughts on that? I know we're both kind of big on Juwan Johnson.
Yeah, I think Juwan Johnson has a ton of upside. I don't think it's going to come right away. I think it's going to come a little bit down the road. But yeah, obviously Troutman is huge. He can block very well. He's just the whole package at tight end. He can block, he can catch, he can do a little bit of everything. But I think our true probably receiving tight end is definitely Juwan Johnson. Nick Vannett's going to be on the shelf for a little bit, at least the first couple weeks of the season. He's got an injury right now. I think Troutman does too, but I think he should be good to go for week one. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% positive. And then Garrett Griffin, he's just a guy that Sean Payton loved. For some reason, somehow, he always manages to make the roster. But he's solid. He can block. He's kind of like a little bit of everything role as well. But yeah, I'm excited to see Juwan Johnson. I think he's got all the tools to be a very good tight end. A lot of tools to be a Benjamin Watson style tight end, maybe even a Kyle Pitts type of tight end. Obviously, we haven't really seen Kyle Pitts in the NFL yet, so I can't really make that comparison. But I've seen Juwan Johnson's college highlights, watched them in depth, watched his games. He's not much of a blocker, but I think as long as he can go out there and do enough blocking to have an impact on the offense in that area, I think he could potentially end up serving as like a true number 2 tight end to Troutman, maybe even number 1 if Troutman doesn't emerge the way we're all hoping. But yeah, definitely the sky's the limit for him. It's kind of funny because like someone was just asking me for some fantasy football advice the other day about Juwan Johnson. I was like, you probably shouldn't take him now, but if you're in a dynasty league, he's a guy you might want to look at because I think within the next year or two here, Juwan Johnson's going to be a household name. So,
yeah, we have big hopes for him. I think once he gets that blocking down, he has the skill set to be able to, be part of an offense and demand the snap count that a number 2 would have, or even a number 1 tight end. And I'm really excited for that as well. Did you set up your linemen as just linemen like the same that we did earlier?
Yeah, just O-line.
Okay, I got these like they're alphabetized by name or something, so I'm trying to make sure I'm organized. While I'm doing that, let's start with our centers here: Eric McCoy, Will Clapp, and Cesar Ruiz. I think those are 3 names that we pretty much cemented into the linemen there. Who else do we have on the line?
We have Teron Armstead, Andrus P., Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, Ryan Ramczyk, Will Clapp, Landon Young, James Hurst, and Calvin Throckmorton. And I think it's a very good group. I'm glad that the Saints decided to keep more offensive linemen than really any other position. So that's super nice. Teron Armstead, obviously, is going to be starting out there. So will Pete, McCoy, Ruiz, and Ramczyk. Those are our starters. And then we have really good depth in Will Clapp. He's just been with the team for a while now. And every time he comes in, he's pretty solid. So he can also serve as a guard if we need him to back up in there. Sometimes he even checks in as a tight end and just goes out there and blocks. So that's nice. Landon Young, he was a late round draft pick, I think, for us either this year or last year. I think it was this year, from BYU. He looks solid. I'm pretty excited to see what he brings. He probably won't play too much. He's just a backup, but you never know. James Hurst was another guy. We re-signed him this offseason. I was super happy we re-signed him because he balled out for us last year when he had to step up and play. He can play guard and tackle, so we got a little flexibility with him. Calvin Throckmorton, he's a guy no one really knows too much about, but I was super high on him last offseason because he played every single position on the offensive line in college and started every single game, but I believe one in his college career at Oregon. So he's a guy who can literally play anywhere for us. I think he's mostly been practicing at the two guard positions, but he can also flex out the tackles. He can even play center. So he's a guy we have a ton of versatility with, so that's super nice.
Yeah, I think having that versatility in the offensive line allows a lot of different looks. I'm feeling that the protection is good enough to allow Jameis the time he needs. It's just, can the decision-making be where it needs to be? After spending a year on the bench behind Drew, I'm really hoping that Jameis is kind of taking the goods, the positive stuff from that. But we'll have to wait and see. His O-line is solid. I'm happy we got Will Clapp and Eric McCoy and a good interior there, especially in the NFC South. That's going to be very competitive this year.
Most definitely, yeah. It's always nice to beef up your O-line and have some good depth. Depth is just as important as the starters. So a lot of teams will be like, "Oh, our first five are pretty good," but you got to have that depth in case someone goes down. And I'm confident that if someone were to go down, just like Pete did last year, just like other people did last year, that we have enough in our backups to step up and replace those guys.
Absolutely. And a little bit of news with the fullback situation. Alex Arma's on the practice squad, and it looks like they've picked up Adam Prentice, the rookie out of South Carolina. Big man, 6 foot, 245. What are your thoughts on him?
He reminds me a little bit of Brian Cushing, believe it or not, the former linebacker for the Houston Texans. He's just freaking jacked, man. Like, he's just a huge dude. He's just like your kind of your stereotypical fullback. He's just a big dude who just goes out there and can spring open blocks. Super nice to have a guy like that. I mean, we literally cut both of our fullbacks that we had in the entire offseason that were working out with the team because Prentice became available. So that's obviously huge for us. I don't know too much about him. I know that he wasn't a huge part of the passing or rushing game in college, but most fullbacks typically aren't. But I think with Sean Payton as his head coach, and the Saints are a team that loves to use the fullback. And I remember whenever we signed Mike Burton before the start of last season, I had him on my podcast, and we were talking about how he was excited to play for the Saints because the Saints used the fullback position, and we saw how Mike Burton was kind of used a little bit last year. So I think he could have a big year for us. And yeah, I think he honestly has the potential to probably be the best fullback we've had since Zach Line. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers now. 20 receptions for 128 yards with one score. Not bad. Averaging about just over 6, I think, reception. So that's not bad at all. A guy that I'm excited to see how that works out. I know they got him off the Broncos, I believe. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. Let's move on to the defense here. D linemen, it looks like kind of the usual suspects that we were thinking beginning of the prediction video there. We got Davenport, JT Gray, Granderson, Cameron Jordan, Tano, Passignon. I think we get hung up on that one, but Peyton Turner, Malcolm Roach, Kristen Ringo, and Shai Tuttle. What are your thoughts? It looks like a pretty, flexible D-line there.
Yeah, I really like our defensive line. It's actually changed a little bit now. I know we just brought in a couple new defensive tackles to kind of fill that void until David Onyemata comes back from his 6-game suspension. But, I mean, the defensive ends seemed pretty set in stone from the get-go. I mean, Cam Jordan, Davenport are going to anchor the edges. Peyton Turner is going to rotate in there. So will Carl Granderson. Tano is a huge special teams specimen, so he's going to be big on, blocking kicks for us in the middle. and rotate in at defensive end if we need him to. But I think his bread and butter is probably special teams. So I think that's where he's going to make his biggest impact on the Saints. Christian Ringo outright won the defensive tackle battle, I guess, in the offseason. Defensive tackle's looking a little weak right now, but like I said, we did just sign 2 new defensive tackles, so we'll kind of see what that brings to the Saints. But overall, I think it's a pretty good unit, and we have a very flexible defensive line, so it's looking pretty solid for us.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how, our new players come together, especially Peyton Turner, first-round pick. Everyone was scratching their head. I remember we were talking about that, kind of scratching our heads at that one, but obviously they see something in him. I'm excited to see how he gets along in the regular season. And let's move on to linebackers, man. That's our next topic here. We have Zac Bond, Demario Davis, Andrew Dowell, Caden Ellis, Chase Hansen, Pete Werner. It looks like pretty much the same. I think we have, the same players in our prediction here. What are your thoughts on the linebacking core?
Yeah, I think it's probably the best position overall that we have on our team right now, especially our defense. Besides the safety position, maybe I think probably I don't know. It's a toss-up between safety and linebacker as far as the best position on our entire team right now. Demario Davis, obviously the captain of the defense. Dude's a stud. He has been since he came to the Saints. I'm sure he'll continue that trend as well. We got his wingman and Quan Alexander back. We saw what they can do together on the field at the same time. I mean, they're both so fast and so talented, so I'm really excited to see them back in action again for a whole season this time. Hopefully Quan stays healthy and we're good to go there. Zac Bond, like I mentioned in our last podcast, he was working out with the Watt brothers this offseason. And, he's really become a very nice edge rusher. He kind of showcased a little bit of that in the preseason as well. So I'm pretty pumped to see what he kind of emerges into. I think he's going to see an increased role on the defense this year for sure, especially now that Anzalone and all those other linebackers he was competing with are gone. Pete Werner, we didn't get to see him at all in the preseason due to an injury. So I don't think he'll have a big role on the defense right away. I think he'll probably play a role on special teams and stuff like that, as most rookies do. But yeah, that's kind of where you earn your keep in the NFL is you go out there on special teams, you start making plays there, and then you eventually get promoted up to the defense. So I think he's going to get some snaps at some point on defense, and we'll see what he kind of showcases then. We also have Caden Ellis, Andrew Dowell, and Chase Hansen. Chase Hansen looked like a freaking special teams ace in the preseason. He was looking really good. Same on the defense as well. He was just looking overall like a very talented linebacker. I didn't see too much of Andrew Dowell. He's like the seventh linebacker. If we need anybody to if we have to drop anybody at the linebacker position, Andrew Dowell is probably the first pick to be dropped. And then Caden Ellis, he was the star linebacker of the preseason for us. So it was obvious that he was going to stick around. The Saints love him. Sean Payton loves him. And I wouldn't be surprised if he plays a little bit of tight end for us as well, because he did that in college. He played on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So a little trickery there that a lot of teams don't know about, a lot of people don't know about.
Did I miss Quan Alexander? Is that a big name there? I knew I was missing someone. I know a lot of guys we lost in the offseason. Quan Alexander, lucky enough to get him back. Huge addition. I'm excited to see how he can, help guide this defense to a solid position. I'm nervous. A lot of younger guys, there are some veterans in there, especially at the, second, third level of defense. As you said, these safeties, very strong group that we have. But let's go to corners before we touch on that. Paulson Adebo, guy you're big on, Ken Crawley, Marshawn Lattimore, PJ Williams, and JT Gray. I believe that's all of them, right? Am I missing someone?
So the only actual corners we have are Lattimore, Crawley, and Adebo. The other ones are kind of listed as safeties. So we really only kept 3 true corners on our roster right now, which is crazy. But like you just kind of touched on, while there's only 3 actual corners on our roster, we also do have CJ Gardner Johnson, who plays a nickel role for us anyways. So he's basically a glorified cornerback that's just listed as a safety. And we have PJ Williams as well, who is listed as a free safety, but we all already know that he came into the league as a corner and can play that cornerback position well. So we really kind of have like 5 corners, but we only have 3 corners listed on our roster. But I think the 3 that we kept are very good. Ken Crawley very much earned his keep on the roster. This preseason, he balled out. It's the definite number 2 corner to Marshawn Lattimore right now. Paulson Adebo, I'm sure he's going to get some time in there as well. He looked pretty good in the preseason as well. I think he just needs to not be as grabby. I think he just needs to transition to the speed of the NFL a little bit, but I think the sky's the limit for him. I think of as highly of Paulson Adebo, if not higher than the same way I think about Jawan Johnson. So I'm very, very hype about Paulson Adebo. I knew he was going to make the roster. He is pretty much a lock. But yeah, I think we have a pretty good corner unit. Obviously, there's still about a week and a couple of days here before the Saints' first actual game versus the Green Bay Packers. So there's obviously still some moves that could potentially be made to bring in a bigger name corner opposite of Lattimore, but we'll see. There's nothing set in stone yet, obviously. We don't really know too much or anything about what the Saints are doing, but you have to imagine that they're definitely weighing some options in terms of potentially bringing in another corner. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on, considering we only have 3 bodies at the cornerback position right now.
Yeah, and it's definitely something to address before the season. You want to make sure they get the reps in training there in practice. The safety position, as you touched on, very good, in my opinion, with Jeff Heath, Marcus Williams, and Malcolm Jenkins. I'm excited to see Jenkins back. I really am. I know that he was in Philadelphia for a while, but a guy who's got the experience, he's been around the NFL, he knows what it takes to get to the playoffs, and hopefully we'll be able to push us, even further. What are your thoughts on that safety core?
Yeah, I think just like I mentioned earlier, they're just right up there with our linebackers. I think they're very, very talented. Having Malcolm Jenkins, who's the last member of our Super Bowl team back in 2009, 2010. So obviously having him and he's experienced 2 Super Bowl wins in his career. So it's nice to have a guy like him as a co-defensive captain with Demario Davis. CJ Gardner Johnson is going to be that nickel corner. We've already seen what he can do, and he's only getting better. So that's obviously good. Jeff Heath, he's a guy. I don't know if he's going to stick around for too long, but I was a little bit surprised that he made the 53. So I'm happy because he's some good veteran depth, and I think he has a shot to contribute if we need him to. Marcus Williams, obviously, as long as he can, stay in position and things of that nature, which he proved last season that he could regain that rookie season form and continue to intercept passes out there. Just kind of be our center fielder, so to speak. I think the sky's the limit again for him. Obviously, it's kind of another contract year for Marcus Williams. He got franchise tagged this offseason. Hopefully, we can work out a long-term deal with him because I love him at free safety. But, I think it's another huge year for Marcus Williams, and hopefully he just goes up there and just balls out like he does.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to seeing how this defense does, especially I think playing Rodgers at home week 1 is going to be the litmus test there of, okay, what did we do well in the offseason? What do we need to improve on moving forward? And, when you're playing, even though Rodgers is a little bit older, there's been some issues up in Green Bay. He was kind of feuding with their front office, but I do think still he's got the tools and the ability necessary to make sure that, okay, you got to play 4 quarters of football against this guy. You can't take any plays off. Basically, we have special teams left. Will Lutz, I think, is the only kicker. They got rid of Aldrick Rosas, and the long snapper is the same as Zach Wood, right?
Yeah.
Usual suspects.
Yeah, I know they're going to probably sign a kicker of some variety. I think Rosas is going to come back to be the kicker week 1. I think they just cut him for the time being, and they're just going to re-sign him later this week because they have to place Will Lutz on the injury list. So I don't know how long he's going to be on there for, but obviously Lutz is injured right now. He's going to be injured. Who knows? Could be for the whole season. So I think Rosas is going to be re-signed. So he'll be our week 1 kicker, I would imagine. And then Blake Gillikin's going to be our punter, and then Zach Wood's going to be the long snapper. So that wraps up the 53.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, hopefully Rosas can come in and do a job. Gillikin, we've been saying he's a great punter. Zach Wood, obviously a lock at that long snapper position for a number of years now. What are your, general overall thoughts? I'm looking at this and I'm thinking a lot of versatility. It's just up to the coach to really make this team shine. What do you feel about this?
I think as long as we can stay healthy, we're definitely in that playoff mix for sure. If it has to get down to the nitty gritty where we have to depend on our depth a little bit more, I think that's where we might hurt a little bit. Obviously we've seen our team have incredible depth the past 3-4 years, and now we just don't have really anywhere close to that kind of depth anymore, especially in positions of need like corner and receiver. I think it's not going to take long at all before we really start to miss Janoris Jenkins and all those guys that we had last season. Obviously, I think we're going to miss Michael Thomas very early in the season. I think we're going to miss a lot of guys. But I think we'll even miss Jared Cook a little bit, if I'm being honest. I don't know if Jawan Johnson's really going to be all he's hyped up to be at start, at least. You got to get the guy a little bit of time to develop. He's played receiver his whole life, and now he's being asked to switch positions and not really have too much time to do that. So I just, Who Dat Nation can be a little hard on people sometimes. I could speak from experience on that one. And, I think they might get a little hard on Jawan Johnson if he's not all he's hyped up to be from the get-go. So, we had to be a little patient with this roster. I feel like, everyone's still kind of learning and developing. It's a very new roster. It's a lot of old faces, a lot of old names, but a very new roster. We're at the start of a brand new era here. This is the kind of roster that I could see either being very, very good and make the playoffs, or it could be very, very bad and we miss the playoffs and it looks nothing like this next season. So it's a roster that could go either way, and that's just the 100% truth. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything for y'all. Like, I'm a diehard Saints fan, always will be. But, we are lacking in some significant areas, and we do have a very, very tough schedule. And good teams know how to attack your areas of weakness. So as long as we can rise to the occasion, step up, and use that veteran leadership that I think we have quite a bit of on our roster, then I think we'll be fine. And a lot of it, like you kind of mentioned, it's going to kind of be up to Jameis and how well he performs. If he plays anything like he did in the preseason, you might as well just give us a Super Bowl trophy right now.
we can only hope, man. I do think, final thoughts here, just kind of wrapping things up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe to Down the Block Sports, smack the notification bell, and of course, like the video. I think final thought for me is going to be, looking at this team, can the Saints control the ball? They need to control the tempo. They need to make sure the offense stays on the field, because if you play against a lot of these teams in a tough schedule, is the defense going to perform? You look at the offseason losses of, Sheldon Rankins and Trey Hendrickson and all these guys, Janoris Jenkins, as you mentioned, they're losing a lot of talent in the defensive side of the ball. And to really combat that, it's going to be about game management, game control. Can Jameis keep the ball in, the Saints' possession? Can he not make silly turnovers? And can he give us the wins when they matter? We're hopefully going to be eating some W's, but we'll see how that works out. Michael Balko, founder of Who Dat Domain. Make sure you check that out as well. Thanks for joining me, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As always, stay tuned for the Who Dat Chat. We're going to be dropping a lot of fire episodes coming up here soon.
Super hot fire coming at you every week. Make sure you subscribe to Down the Block Sports. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next time.